Welcome to the Sci-Fi Codes channel. Have fun listening to this story. Don't forget to subscribe. With the subscribe button, Chapter 1, The Gathering Storm. Ambassador Blur had experienced countless strange and alarming moments during his tenure as the Globon representative to the Galactic Council. In his 37 years, he'd witnessed the Great Space Whale Migration Crisis of 2184, barely survived the infamous cafeteria incident of 2187, the stains on the ceiling still hadn't fully come out, and had somehow stayed conscious during Representative Zix's 8-hour speech on tentacle maintenance. But none of these prepared him for what was happening now. The humans were being nice, and not just their usual, oops, sorry we conquered your moon, kind of nice. No, this was different, genuinely, overwhelmingly, disturbingly nice. It all began 3 weeks ago. The humans arrived at the council meeting early, not fashionably late, nor even precisely on time, but early. They immediately set to work arranging chairs, early humans. The very species that had once requested the council's standard time be adjusted to 5 more minutes, please. Ambassador Jurk, passing by the meeting hall, had fainted upon witnessing the humans' uncharacteristic enthusiasm, and things only escalated from there. The next clue had come with the parking situation on Level 7. Level 7's loading dock had the prime parking spots, close to the coffee machines and farthest from the methane-breathing Xiaxians. Humans traditionally defended these spaces with the vigor they once applied to guarding nuclear launch codes. But last Tuesday, Ambassador Chen had offered her spot to a junior molluscoid diplomat. Security footage showed the mollusk frozen in disbelief for a solid 6 minutes before they dared accept. Blur muttered anxiously to himself, his epidermis rippling with worry as he reviewed his notes. The previous day, the humans had brought homemade cookies to the Transgalactic Trade Committee meeting. Homemade cookies, and not the generic vending machine variety that humans usually claimed were basically the same thing. No, these were fresh-baked, with little frosted smiley faces and even sprinkles. 3 species had requested emergency genetic screenings, convinced they were hallucinating. Something was wrong. Deeply, alarmingly wrong. Chapter 2. Summoning the Experts. In a state of emergency, Blur activated his distress beacon, summoning his most trusted colleagues to his office. This situation called for the finest minds in xenopolitical analysis, those who understood human psychology as well as warfare tactics. Senior analyst Zip Zoop arrived first, all 17 tentacles clutching various data pads. Ambassador Blur, I came as soon as I could. My stars, you're secreting worry mucus. This must be serious. Zip Zoop's tentacles trembled as Blur pointed toward the holoscreen displaying security footage of humans cleaning up after the last council session. Cleaning up. They separated the recycling, Zip Zoop, Blur whispered, horrified. They separated it without being threatened with economic sanctions. The door burst open as Security Chief Kirks entered, his mandibles clicking rapidly, the insectoid equivalent of hyperventilation. I just passed 3 humans in the hallway. They smiled and asked about my larvae's academic achievements. They even remembered their names, all 67 of them. A hush fell over the room as the implications of the humans' newfound kindness sank in. Blur struggled to stay calm. We need to gather more information, fast. The others agreed, so Zip Zoop brought up graphs detailing recent human behavior. The politeness levels were unprecedented, soaring to levels no species had seen before. They were using terms like please and thank you, apologizing for small mistakes, and even following council protocols they'd traditionally ignored in favor of their own chaotic methods. One human had even apologized for breathing too loudly. It was too much. Blur's entire surface quivered with grim determination as he issued orders. This must be observed and documented. We cannot allow such a shift in behavior to go unexplained. Whatever the humans are hiding, we will uncover it. Chapter 3. Cracks in the Façade. The meditation session was going exactly as planned, at least as much as one could expect when organizing a multi-species attempt at achieving inner peace. Junior analyst Dave was circulating the room with what he hoped was a soothing smile plastered on his face. Each member of the Galactic Council was seated on cushions, arranged with species-specific ergonomic supports, and Dave had placed name tags in all 247 known languages, taking into account each species' cultural preferences for positioning and address. Would anyone like some calming tea? Dave asked, forcing a note of serene professionalism into his voice. I've prepared 17 different varieties, each one optimized for different biochemistries. I made sure the silicon-based blends are kept at a precise 372.00 degrees Kelvin to avoid any crystallization issues. If any of you are sensitive to tannins, please let me know. I even have a tannin-free option brewed at a neutral pH for maximum compatibility. As he arranged and rearranged the teacups for what felt like the 8th time, Dave's hands started to tremble. His composure was beginning to falter, and Ambassador Blore, ever the keen observer, oozed closer, leaving faint worry mucus trails in his wake. "Dave," Blore said softly, "the cups are already perfectly aligned. You don't need to keep adjusting them. But what if they're off by 0.3 millimeters? Dave's eye twitched as he resisted the urge to measure each cup's position against the meticulously sketched-out grid he had in his pocket. What if someone notices? What if it ruins everything we've been working so hard to? He stopped short, his face flushing with horror as he realized what he'd just let slip. Senior Analyst Zip-Zup's tentacles darted out, each one holding a different data pad, which they pointed at Dave accusingly. "Aha! Working so hard to do what exactly, Dave?" Dave forced a shaky laugh, his voice cracking. "Oh, nothing. Everything's fine. Just us humans being, naturally organized and thoughtful. Definitely not hiding anything catastrophically important." Security Chief Kirk, who'd been suspicious since the first whisper of this change in human behavior, twitched his antennae. "Dave, your species invented the phrase close enough. I've seen your species file entire military budgets under miscellaneous snacks. This isn't you." For a moment, Dave wavered. His hands clenched and unclenched as he tried to gather his thoughts, but the weight of weeks spent acting like a model of restraint and organization finally broke him. With a strangled cry, he slumped onto a meditation cushion, knocking it slightly off-center. He didn't even try to fix it. "I can't take it anymore," he wailed, burying his face in his hands. "Do you know what it's like to remember all 67 names of the Laravani species' offspring? I had to get a neural implant just to keep it all organized." Blore leaned in, his worried mucus flow forming little puddles beneath him. "The truth, Dave. Why are humans suddenly acting like responsible members of galactic society? What are you hiding?" Dave's shoulders shook and he finally looked up, his face stricken. "We found something," he whispered. "Something big, something ancient, something that's coming for our galaxy." Chapter 4. The Void Wanderers. The room fell into a stunned silence. The only sound was the gentle hum of the environmental controls and the constant soft drip of worry mucus from the collective representatives. Senior Analyst Zip-Zup's tentacles curled in anxious anticipation. "What exactly did you find?" they whispered. Dave swallowed hard, visibly struggling to keep his composure. "We call them the Void Wanderers, ancient beings from the spaces between galaxies. Our deep space sensors picked up the first signs of them 3 months ago, and since then, well, we've been trying to figure out a way to tell you all without causing mass panic." Blore's surface rippled with distress, shifting from a worried shade of lavender to a deep, intense indigo. "How ancient are we talking here?" "Older than any star in our galaxy," Dave said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "They travel from galaxy to galaxy, consuming everything in their path. Planets, stars, asteroid belts, anything with mass or energy they devour, and they're getting closer every day." Zip-Zup's tentacles froze mid-air. "They devour star clusters?" "For breakfast, literally," Dave muttered, a haunted look in his eyes. "They have a feeding schedule, and they only feed in the mornings. We've been tracking it. We've had to." Security Chief Kirk's mandibles clicked in distress. "And you thought the best way to inform the Council of this existential threat was to suddenly become model diplomats?" "We tried to warn you," Dave said, throwing his hands up in frustration. "Remember last year, when we called that emergency session about a potential threat to all known life? Half the Council was playing mobile games, and the other half was arguing about parking validation." Blore's memory pod throbbed in recognition. "That was when I saw you humans doing that strange interpretive dance and thought it was some new form of human exercise trend." "Exactly," Dave replied. "No one took us seriously. We tried reports, we tried memos, we even tried skywriting danger approaching in 27 different languages, but everyone just complained about the smoke. "So you decided to follow proper protocols and suddenly act organized?" Kirk asked, his antennae vibrating with disbelief. "It was our last resort," Dave admitted, looking exhausted. "If we started behaving like responsible members of galactic society, we figured everyone would realize something was terribly, catastrophically wrong." A ripple of shock passed through the room as the implications of Dave's words sank in. The assembled representatives stared at each other, trying to process the enormity of the situation. "And how long do we have before these Void Wanderers reach us?" Zips Up asked, their tentacles clutching each other in distress. "At current speed?" Dave's voice was barely a whisper. "Maybe 3 months." Chapter 5. Panic and Planning. The silence that followed was deafening. The assembled council members could barely process the enormity of what they'd just learned. Finally, Zips Up spoke, their voice trembling with terror. 3 months? That's nothing. The Proxima Centauri incident took us 6 months just to write up the formal apology documentation. Blore oozed toward the holographic display, bringing up the Council's emergency response plans. The screen flickered, and a dusty, ancient file labeled Galaxy-Level Threat Protocol appeared. The plan hadn't been updated in nearly a century, mostly because no one believed any species would survive an event that necessitated it. "Well," Blore said, attempting a tone of grim optimism, "at least we have a plan." He opened the file, revealing an extensive outline that included contingencies for asteroid impacts, supernova events, and intergalactic diplomatic insults, but very little on ancient space beings with an appetite for galaxies. Kirk, who'd spent his career preparing for disasters, started flipping through the protocol. Are these plans all based on using emotional support teapots as our primary line of defense?" "Teapots, and an evacuation drill that only covers 3 star systems," Zips Up added, their tentacles trembling as they scrolled through the ancient document. Dave buried his face in his hands. "I knew this would happen. Humanity is doomed." But Blore placed a reassuring pseudopod on Dave's shoulder. "Dave, humans may be chaotic and frankly an administrative nightmare, but you have spirit. We all do. We've faced crises before, and if we work together, maybe, just maybe, we can think of something." As Dave looked around, he saw tentative nods of agreement from the council members. The entire chamber, even those who could not physically display facial expressions, exuded an air of determination. Kirk, snapping out of his initial shock, stepped forward with newfound resolve. "Right. Then let's start by brainstorming. We need ideas, fast. Dave, you know more about this threat than anyone else. What do we have in terms of technology, defenses, or stalling tactics?" Dave's face lit up with a glimmer of hope. "Actually, we have a few ideas. Our scientists back on Earth have been working on a sort of decoy system. It's not perfect, but we think it might confuse the Wanderers long enough for us to come up with a more permanent solution." Zips Up perked up. "A decoy, you say?" "Explain." "It's basically a hologram system that can simulate entire star clusters. We've been testing it in the hopes of distracting the Wanderers and leading them in a different direction. If it works, it could buy us weeks, maybe even months." Kirk's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "That might just be crazy enough to work, but we'll need resources, cooperation, and a coordinated response across the entire council." Blore turned to the assembly, his epidermis flashing in colors of determination. "Representatives, we've survived the space whale migration crisis of 2184. We survived the great coffee shortage of 2182. And yes, we even survived the tentacle maintenance lecture of 2187. We can do this." A murmur of agreement swept through the council chamber as, one by one, representatives raised their appendages, fins, or other respective limbs in a gesture of solidarity. "This is our galaxy," Blore declared, his voice ringing through the chamber, "and we'll defend it together." And so, with a renewed sense of purpose, the Galactic Council prepared for the fight of their lives, united by an unexpected alliance, and of course a last-ditch plan that involved holographic stars, goodwill cookies, and a species that was finally taking protocol very seriously. The council chamber buzzed with activity as representatives filed out to prepare their worlds. Dave felt an unexpected warmth in his heart. The council would stand together against the Void Wanderers, and maybe, just maybe, Humanity's newfound politeness would save the galaxy after all. Chapter 6. The Final Gambit. The galactic fleet floated in the endless void, an assortment of shimmering vessels from every corner of the galaxy, each outfitted with holographic projectors, experimental decoy devices, and just enough armament to make it look like they weren't entirely bluffing. They formed a vast, unified defense line, a display of interstellar solidarity so beautiful that, for a moment, even the most skeptical council members almost believed they could hold off an ancient, ravenous entity. Dave stood on the bridge of the lead ship, nervously tapping his fingers against the control panel. "All ships report," he called into the comms. "Alpha Squadron standing by," crackled Blor's voice, emanating calm determination. "Emotional support teapots are fully deployed. Delta Squadron ready and reasonably well prepared," reported Security Chief Kirk. "Anticipatory molting levels are higher than usual, but morale is stable." Zip-Zup's voice buzzed through next. "Gamma Squadron, decoy emitters and cookie-based welcome packages are active and ready. Preliminary testing shows an 82% chance of decoy efficacy, by which I mean we have no real data, but it looks plausible on paper." Dave tried to ignore the faint knot of worry tightening in his stomach. It was a decent plan, if one didn't dwell too long on the fact that it hinged on deceiving a species older than the stars themselves. But he'd learned one thing from his own species, and from all the galaxy's representatives now standing together. Sometimes, you just had to bluff. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. "All right, everyone, let's put on a show." Moments later, the first faint, indistinct forms of the Void Wanderers appeared on the sensors. They were enormous, shifting clouds of dark matter and energy, drifting toward the fleet with an air of ancient purpose. The Wanderers didn't move like any life form known in the galaxy. They drifted through space as if they were part of it, vast and alien, their slow approach exuding a cosmic hunger. "Decoy systems, now!" Dave commanded. The holographic projectors blazed to life. Around the fleet, clusters of artificial stars, planets, and entire mock star systems flickered into existence, glowing as brightly as real ones. The illusion was so convincing that, even from inside the command deck, Dave found himself momentarily fooled. It looked like a small galaxy was unfolding around them, shimmering with all the richness and depth of actual celestial bodies. The Void Wanderers paused. Their forms shifted, slowly turning toward the nearest decoy star cluster, a low-frequency hum emanating from their massive, shadowy bodies, as if they were considering the banquet before them. "It's working," Blor whispered over the comms, his voice trembling with barely contained awe. "They're moving toward the decoys." For a few tense moments, the crew watched as the Wanderers drifted, slowly but surely, toward the holographic stars. The plan was working. They were drawn to the decoy systems, ignoring the real fleet entirely. Dave allowed himself to exhale, just as a distant metallic scraping noise echoed through the comms. Dave?" Kirk's voice crackled through, noticeably panicked. I think one of the decoys just glitched. There's an asteroid blinking in and out of existence." Dave's heart leapt into his throat. "Can we stabilize it?" "Working on it," Zip-Zup replied, their tentacles flying across the control panel. "The star simulation projectors are heating up faster than we thought. We've got another 2 minutes before— oh no." The holographic stars suddenly flickered, their brightness dipping noticeably before steadying once more. It was a minor blip, but it was enough. One of the Wanderers had hesitated, as if sensing the deception, and began drifting away from the decoy stars, toward the fleet. A murmur of fear went through the crew, and Dave felt his breath catch. If they broke formation, if they tried to retreat now, the Wanderers would recognize the ships as food, and the entire plan would fall apart. "Stay steady, everyone," Dave said, hoping his voice sounded more confident than he felt. "It's just a blip. Zip-Zup, can we redirect their attention?" I have an idea," Zip-Zup replied, hesitating only a moment before plunging into action. "Activating the goodwill cookies." With a flick of a tentacle, thousands of holographic glittering cookie images burst into view. Each cookie floated toward the Wanderers, bearing welcome messages in bright, cheerful text. It was a desperate gambit, but somehow it seemed to catch the Wanderers' attention. They paused, moving slowly toward the floating cookies as though they were trying to read them. The silence on the bridge was electric as the Wanderers moved back toward the decoys, seemingly entranced by the cookies. They They're following them, Blore whispered, his voice choked with wonder. By the stars, they're following the cookies. The fleet held its breath as the wanderers drifted further and further into the holographic galaxy, each cookie drawing them deeper into the heart of the decoy star systems. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the wanderers vanished from sight, lost in the illusion of stars, drifting ever further from the real galaxy. A cheer erupted on the bridge, echoing through every ship in the fleet. The threat had been diverted, and for the first time in weeks, the council members allowed themselves to feel a flicker of hope. Dave slumped back in his chair, exhausted but relieved. "Good work, everyone," he said with a tired smile. "And remind me to file a commendation for those cookies." One by one, the ships in the fleet began to turn back toward their home planets, each representative buzzing with relief and excitement. As the Earth delegation ship set a course back to the Galactic Council HQ, Blore sidled over to Dave, his mucus coating a soft, contented shade of lavender. "You humans are really something, Dave. I suppose we underestimated you." Dave laughed, feeling lighter than he had in weeks. "Trust me, Blore, so did we." Blore nodded thoughtfully and then added, "The Council might have a few extra demands now, Dave. If humans can handle ancient beings, I think we can expect punctuality in committee meetings from now on." Dave smiled. "After this, we might actually pull it off." The ships scattered across the galaxy, returning home to spread the word of what had happened, the day the galaxy had faced down an ancient threat and emerged victorious, thanks to courage, creativity, and a deceptively simple plan. And somewhere in the depths of space, far beyond the boundaries of the galaxy, the Void Wanderers continued their journey, following an endless trail of holographic cookies, each one sparkling like a tiny, improbable star. Before proceeding, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell.